Well, good morning. Welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thank you for joining me this morning. Get your Bible. Let's look together at a most perplexing psalm, Psalm 137. It's a song of captivity. As you read it, you might, if you're old enough as I am, to remember a top 40 song by the Rivers of Babylon that was sung back in the 70s. And we might reflect on that song and wonder where it came from. Well, we found it. It's from Psalm 137 itself. It's really a tale of three cities, actually two cities, with one just mentioned along the side. The cities are Babylon and Jerusalem, with a slight mention of Edom as well. Babylon, of course, was the nation to which the Jews had gone in captivity. That's kind of the background of this psalm. It had been a horrific, terrible invasion with atrocities, including the destruction of the temple, that had been enacted against the Jewish people as they were hauled off into captivity by this wicked nation of people that treated those they captured with no mercy whatsoever. So, as we look at this particular psalm, the background of it is worth mentioning. John Phillips mentions that Babylon is where men first conceived the idea of a world empire. It was in Babylon that the first League of Nations was formed. There, the first man embarked on a one world society held together by common political, religious, and cultural ties. It was at Babylon that Satan first introduced the concept of a Superman, a great rebel. Nimrod was the first lawless one, the man of sin of his day. He was the first antichrist in type, so to speak. It was at Babylon that these early prototypes of Satan's plans would be replaced by reality. It was to Babylon that God ultimately banished the Jews for their idolatry and persistent rebellion against his rule, so that there, in the capital of idolatry, they might be cured of it. Jerusalem, on the other hand, was and will be God's world capital. It was there that he was pleased to place his name. He had the temple built there, took up residence on earth. It was to Jerusalem that the tribes were to come and worship at the feasts. It was from Jerusalem that they were to be ruled. It was there that David, King David, set up a dynasty from which the Messiah would ultimately come. It was from Jerusalem that men were to learn about the true and the living God. It was called the city of the great king. Well, these are the two primary players in this psalm. There is a third one that is mentioned in one verse, and that is Edom. What about Edom? It was Israel's hereditary foe right from the start. Remember Jacob and Esau, the twins? Jacob, of course, resulted in, with his progeny, the nation of Israel. In fact, his name was changed to Israel. That's where you see it first in the Bible as referencing this particular nation. Uh, Esau, on the other hand, was able through his family line to create an entirely different nation, a nation of Edom. And it seems like they were always uh, bound together by jealousy and hard feelings and bitterness to constantly be at war with each other. Right from the start, all through Israel's occupancy of the land, there was warfare between Edom and Israel. Throughout its tenure of the land, Israel not only had to face the hostility of these world superpowers, but also this running guerrilla warfare with her immediate neighbor, hostile neighbor, Edom. Edom, Ammon, and Moab are the three countries of which, the old countries, that comprise modern day Jordan. Of them, Edom, of course, was the most bitter. So then, this is a psalm of the two cities and a next door neighbor which detested everything that Israel stood for. Well, as we get to that point, let's read Psalm 137 and see what it says and feel the pain, the anguish of someone singing a song in captivity. Verse 1, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and cried as we remembered Zion. We hung our lyres on willow trees. It was there that those who had captured us demanded that we sing. Those who guarded us wanted us to entertain them. They said, sing a song from Zion for us. Now, so here's a picture of those who have captured these people from the other country. And you can imagine some of the youngsters like Daniel, like the three guys we saw in the book of Daniel that were called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be thrown in the fiery furnace. Some of these youngsters being told, sing us some songs of your homeland? Was there some Jerusalem jazz? Was there some good old Hebrew rock and roll that you could play for us? I mean, just taunting them and saying, entertain us by singing the music of your land that we have conquered. So this did not bring about good feelings. It's not like you would say, oh, that's great. I get to be on stage tonight. No, not hardly. Matter of fact, the next verse shows exactly how it made them feel. How could we sing Yahweh's songs in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand forget how to play the lyre. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I don't remember you and I don't consider Jerusalem my highest joy. So notice there's this feeling of loyalty toward the place from which we came, this connection to Jerusalem. It could have been just the opposite. It could have been that these young people would have said, look what serving God got us. We're now in this other land. Let's just adopt and become like them. Uh, that God must not love us and care for us at all. Let's just throw him in the trash can and we'll become Babylonians. No, that's not the attitude at all. Instead, their hearts were tied to God's capital, to Jerusalem. So in verse 7, he says, almost as a prayer, "O Yahweh, remember the people of Edom. Remember what they did that day, did the day that Jerusalem was captured." As they're watching this take place, it's almost like they were happy that Jerusalem was being destroyed. Listen to what they said. They said, tear it down to its foundations. You destructive people of Babylon, as it flips back to the Babylonians. See, only one verse about Edom in here. They were cheering the Babylonians on as they demolished Jerusalem. You destructive people of Babylon, blessed is the one who pays you back with the same treatment you gave us. Blessed is the one who grabs your children and smashes them against a rock. Now, that last verse is quite perplexing, and that's the verse that gives most of us trouble as we read this psalm. How is it that you would say a person is somehow blessed by killing little children? You've got to understand the perspective of the person that is writing this. They are saying, oh God, give them back what they gave to us. This is exactly what they did to the children of Israel. It's exactly what they did to the Hebrew babies that they encountered. They took them and dashed them against the rocks. They killed them, something that ancient terror nations would do quite often when they conquered another nation. So this particular lament has to be put in that context. I love the way John Phillips deals with this because he helps us to understand this is perhaps the feeling of the psalmist that he's writing there, but the reality when God allowed Babylon to be conquered was entirely different. He said it's not so much the poet's hope that the Babylonians in turn might suffer a like and terrible fate, it's the relish with which he utters it that troubles us. When he said, happy is this person going to be when they take these babies of Babylon and dash them against rocks. Happy will that person be? This surely has to be the most perplexing beatitude in the Bible, actually, to bless those who would continue such acts of ferocity against the innocent children of a foe, any foe. The psalmist seems to have in mind, however, the poetic justice of God. The fires of his spirit have been stoked by his contemplation of the sanctity and sublimity of Jerusalem, but to picture a man inspired by a passionate love for Jerusalem calling down a blessing on those who murder the children of an enemy is beyond us, which of course goes to show just how much our own thinking has been influenced by the grace of God and the spirit of the gospel of Christ. Perhaps if we had lived in the psalmist's day, if we had seen what we had seen, been where he had been, or might have a better understanding of his point of view, we might really grasp it better. Or if we had lived through an invasion, if we had been subjugated to the atrocities that were wrought by the hand of a cruel enemy, if our children had been thus callously murdered before our eyes, we might not have so much objectivity. Let us hope that our Christianity would carry us through, but perhaps we would have more sympathy with this Old Testament poet prophet just the same. And if you want to feel those exact same emotions in our day, you don't have to go too far back in history, do you? All you have to remember are the black Islamic jihadist flags that flew in various places around the world, mostly the other side of the world from where we are right now. But as they invaded various lands, some of you remember watching, maybe you didn't watch, but it was a horrific scene when Christians were taken down to a beach and by these Islamic terrorists were made to kneel as one by one they were all beheaded for the crime of being a Christian. We remember watching those areas of Syria and Iraq that are some of the oldest Christian communities in the world, dating back to almost the time of the early church, where people have lived there in peace for generations upon generations. We watched their churches and their villages be destroyed. We watched as their people were taken out into the streets and publicly crucified. We watched as their children were not only killed, but as these Islamic jihadists did, allowed their own children to participate in those executions. It was horrific, it was terrible. And as the armies of various nations began to invade and retake those lands, think about what the invaders, especially if they personally had known many of those people who had died, what they would have wanted to do to the captors. It seems like they would have wanted to exact upon them the same punishment that had been given to those that they so mercilessly murdered before. It's a feeling that's not unusual. It's a feeling that is quite natural, actually. But what really took place, for example, when we see the feelings of this psalmist as he talks about how he would like to see, just as the Hebrew babies were dashed against the rocks when the Babylonians invaded, he'd love to see them get the same punishment from whoever invades them next. But listen to what really happened. In actual fact, the ultimate fall of Babylon at the hands of the Medes and the Persians was relatively mild. So perhaps after all, this prophecy has an even more significant focus. Maybe it's focusing on the end times and the final manifestation on the earth of the Babylonian world power and as led and inspired by the beast. Well, I don't know if that's the case or not, but it is evident that God did not, if it was all about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, he did not enact upon the Babylonians the punishment that this psalmist called for. It's a beautiful picture of how much pain and suffering can be involved when someone has been ripped from their own country and they've been taken into captivity. You know, it's the kind of pain and suffering that is experienced by people all around the world today in various countries, even our own, as we look at some of those that are kidnapped, sold into sexual slavery and other things, even in these days. How long will this persist? Will persist until Jesus comes, when the righteous judge will come back and exact his mercy and justice exactly as it should be upon everyone. And then we will have that kingdom in which there will be no more laments of the people sitting by the rivers of Babylon or any other place saying, "Woe is me, remember what we had." Instead, we'll be looking forward to a new Jerusalem and a new earth, a new heaven, and all the blessings that God has provided for us through the sacrifice of Jesus at Calvary. It's a great thing to look forward to in days in which we see a lot of this suffering around the world. So wherever you are today, may God bless you. May he keep you safe, keep you whole as we look forward to the blessed hope of the soon return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. God bless you. We'll see you again tomorrow right here as we wake up in the Word.